If you have a Bible, open it up to Psalm 139. Psalm 139. We're going to jump around a couple of different places in Scripture today. And let me just ask you this. How many of you regularly, maybe every year, get a checkup at the doctor? Anybody get a checkup at the doctor? All right. Anybody should get a checkup at the doctor, but you don't? All right. Anybody don't want to do it? All right. Some of you just don't want to answer raise your hands. Hey, every year I will get a checkup, a physical at the doctor. And what they will do is they will go in and they'll do the blood work and they'll weigh me and do all the things and everything. And why do I do that? Because I want to be as healthy as possible. Well, let me ask you a question. When was the last time you did a spiritual, physical, emotional, relational, and a mental checkup? Like on yourself, because only you, except for God, only you know yourself as good as who you are. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. It's going to be a very, very, very just practical message. Psalm 139. Listen to what David said in verses 23 and 24. Listen to what he said. He had this prayer. He said, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts." I mean, isn't that a crazy prayer? Like, God, know my heart. God already knows your heart. He already knows your thoughts. But David's saying, like, God, just know my heart and try me and know my thoughts and see if there's any grievous way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. And so what would happen if you, like today, just said, okay, Lord, just know my heart, know my thoughts. Like, what ways am I not really following you? Because sometimes there's this assumption, like just because I'm a Christian, that I'm going to be growing, right? So just because I'm a Christian, does it mean that I'm going to be growing? All right, couple people. So let's go for the rest of you. If I know Jesus, does that just mean that I'm automatically going to be growing? No, I've got to actually participate with Jesus in growing. Listen to what Jeremiah said about the heart. Jeremiah chapter 17, verses 9 and 10. He said, "The heart is deceitful above all things, desperately sick. Who can understand it? I, the Lord, search the heart, and I test the mind to give every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his deeds." Someone once said this, and you ought to write this down: the unexamined life is not worth living. So I think from time to time it's good. It's good to do a checkup on your marriage. It's good to do a checkup on your family, which, by the way, next week we're starting a new family series called Family Inc., Family Incorporated. And all of us, we've been part of a family, right? All right? Now, maybe in the first service, I couldn't get people to raise their hand, But I'm like, and then I said, you've been part of a dysfunctional family. And then everybody raised their hands, okay? You know what I'm saying? Whether you've been a part of a regular family or a dysfunctional family, you've been part of a family. And next week, we're starting this series. And it'll be a good time for you to do a checkup on your family, on how you're doing. We're going to give some practical skills. But today, we're talking about your own life. And I think this person was so right. The unexamined life is not worth living, because we can just keep going and going and going and not accomplishing anything. And so if you're taking notes, write this down. If you want to change your life, you have to change your habits. And if you want to change your habits, you have to let God change your what? Heart. I need God to change my heart. One of the greatest examples of this is a guy by the name of Abraham in Scripture. Genesis chapter 22. Abraham and Sarah really wanted a little boy. And it wasn't until later in their lives that they had this little boy, and they named him Isaac. And in Genesis chapter 22, verse 1, God comes to Abraham, and listen to what Abraham says. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, "Abraham," and he said, "Here I am." Like when God spoke to Abraham, he said, "Here I am." And then verse 3, so Abraham rose early in the morning. He saddled his donkey, and he took 2 of his young men with him and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place which God had told him. I mean, if God had told you to go to a place, would you just go? Or would you be asking why? Our grandson, his favorite question right now is why? Why? We had him at the fire station yesterday. He wanted to know why we didn't have more fire trucks. And then he wanted to know why. And then I would explain to him why, and he wanted to know why. And then he wanted to know why, and he wanted to know why. He always wants to know why. Let me ask you, do you always want to know why with God? Now, I hear people always asking, why did God do this? And here's what I've learned in life, and I know I've said this before, but I'm just trying to gently remind you. Stop asking why. Because why presupposes that I'm going to fully understand God. Like, even if God were to explain it to us, would we really understand? Maybe the better question is, what, Lord? What do you want me to learn from this situation? What do you want me to learn from what happened? What instead of why? And so Abraham, man, he, instead of saying, why, God? I don't understand. You got to give me all the details. Abraham, he saddles up his donkey. He gets his 2 servants and his son. He cuts the firewood for the burnt offering, and he goes. In obedience, he goes. And look at verses 7 and 8. And Isaac said to his father, Abraham, while they're going, he said, my father. And Abraham said, here I am, my son. And he said, behold the fire and the wood, but where's the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering. God will provide. Say that with me. God will provide. Sometimes God is asking us to do things that just doesn't make sense. Maybe you're a kid and God is just saying, obey your parents, and it just doesn't always make sense. Maybe God is telling you to share your faith with somebody and it just doesn't make sense. But we act in obedience because we know that when God asks us to do something, we can do it. But we don't have to always understand why. We just need to know what. What do you want us to learn from this? And all of a sudden they got there. And Abraham realized the sacrifice was going to be his son. Now, this is not a big deal on a good day. If it's a bad day with your son, like when they get to be teenagers, you might be okay with it. How many know what I'm saying? All right, don't act like you've never thought about that, okay? Like, it might not be bad for you to be a sacrifice. I mean, the way you're acting today. Anybody with me? I like that? Okay, all right, sometimes, okay. Okay. But Abraham, he acted in faith, and look at what happened. The angel of the Lord called to him from heaven as he has the knife and he's getting ready to sacrifice his son. And he says, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, here I am. And he said, do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. That Abraham acted in obedience. And I would encourage you to write this down because this will help lead us into our time of evaluation and self-checkup today. Obedience leads you toward God. Disobedience drives you away from God. So I want you to look at that. Obedience leads you what? Toward God, and disobedience drives you away from God. So when I'm living a life of obedience, it's drawing me toward the Father. It's driving me toward his heart. And when I'm living a life of disobedience, it's driving me further and further and further away from God. So we got to be like Abraham and act in obedience. And so before we do our evaluation, I want to take you to another scripture. The Gospel of John, chapter 15. And I want you to see what Jesus said here. In verse 1, he said, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that does bear fruit, what does he do? He prunes that it may bear more fruit. My wife has been getting into gardening over the last couple of years. Okay, like I'm halfway into it. I like to eat the fruit, you know what I'm saying? And the vegetables, all right? But she's out there, and so she was sick for a week. She got feeling better. So the other night, came home. She goes, meet me out in the garden. So I meet her out there. She's get the garden hose, do this, do that. And she's looking for these squash bugs. Anybody ever heard of squash bugs? All right. And she's got this soapy stuff that she's killing the squash bugs. And then she's taking scissors and she goes, go get me the scissors. So I get the scissors and she's cutting the leaves off and everything and she's pruning it. You know what's crazy? You go back out there another week later, and some of those leaves have grown brand new. Have you guys ever experienced this? They grew brand new leaves. And now the fruit's starting to grow. Why? Because she had to go cut the dead off, some of the dead stuff off, for the new to grow. And one thing that I've learned in my life when it comes to evaluation is there are some things that need to be pruned out of our life. Let me give you some examples because we're going to come to a time of evaluation where you're going to evaluate your own life. Maybe you need to prune a way of thinking in your life. Like most of us become what we think. We're a sum of our thoughts. Maybe there's some thinking you need to prune. Maybe parents, listen, I know you're always telling your kids that they need to hang out with the right people. Maybe you need to prune some of the people that you hang out with. Because maybe they're affecting you as an adult, just like kids affect kids. Maybe there's some selfishness that you need to prune out of your life. Maybe there is some lust. Maybe there is some greed. Maybe there are just some attitudes that you need the Lord to just prune out. If you're going to grow, as we start to talk about some different areas that we can grow in, we've got to allow the Lord to prune that we can what? We can bear more fruit. If I don't allow the Lord to prune me, can I bear more fruit? Not on that particular branch, at least. Already you are clean because of the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. That means I need to be connected to Jesus on a regular basis, not just on Sunday. And I am the vine, Jesus said. You are the branches. We are the branches. And whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do what? Nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he's thrown away like a branch and withers, and the branches are gathered and thrown into the fire and burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. But by this, my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, so prove to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Look at what he says. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things have I spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. Don't answer it out loud. Think about it to yourself. Is your joy full today? Are you living as a Jesus follower and a Christian that your joy is so full, or do you feel empty? And here's the big idea. The goal is for my life to continually be aligned with the ways of Jesus. I want my life to be continually aligned with Jesus. If you ask anybody that I interact with on a regular basis, I'm always asking them, if you see anything in my life that is contrary to what Jesus says, please tell me. Please tell me. Because there are going to be times that I make mistakes and there's going to be times that I have blind spots. When was the last time you had somebody speak into your life and say, hey, I see some blind spots that you might not be seeing? So today, here's what I want to do. I want to go to the gauges that we've learned about over the last couple of years. And I want you to just do some evaluating. So I'm going to ask you to just evaluate yourself. I'm going to walk you through that. Then we're going to do an evaluation online, which will help us as a church to know where you're at. It's anonymous. And then we'll be done. How are you doing spiritually? Are you connected to God more today than you've ever been connected? Or does he feel distant? Every time I feel like God is distant, guess who has distanced themselves? Me. When I don't spend time with the Father, when I don't read his word, when I don't pray, I can start to feel distant. How are you doing spiritually? Let me ask this question. From January 1st of 2024 to now, have you grown spiritually? Or are you just stagnant? Physical. Where are you at physically? Are you healthier now physically than you've been in the last 6 months? Have you challenged yourself? I was telling somebody this morning, we were talking about health and eating right and everything. I'm like, after you get to be 30, you have to stay on top of that for the rest of your life. How many know what I'm talking about? Like, you just have to stay on top of it and make sure that you're conscious about how you're taking care of the temple that God has given you. How are you doing physically? Emotionally? Have you grown emotionally? Or are you still a child? Guys, listen, this was a big one for me for a long time, that I thought I was growing spiritually, but my emotional maturity was not there. And guess what? If your emotional maturity isn't there, probably your spiritual maturity isn't where you think it is. You have deceived yourself just like a child does. That if my emotions, and I'm always angry, and I'm always this, and I'm always not getting my way, and I'm frustrated, there is a direct correlation to all of these gauges in our spiritual life, because they're all spiritual. But how am I growing spiritually? And am I growing emotionally? Like, am I more, here's what I've noticed about me. Just, I'll tell you my evaluation of myself, because I have to live these sermons before I preach them. Just last night, we went to dinner, and we were with Graham, and he spilled something or whatever, and we get to talking. And I said, you know, back when our kids, he spilled it on me. So like on my shirt, like my nice shirt that I had on, okay? And and back when our kids were younger, I would have gotten like frustrated or whatever. And we just started having a dialogue about it. Like that I don't react anymore. Not, I don't want to say that. That's the wrong way to say it. I react less than I did 20 years ago. I respond a lot more than I react. I don't find myself getting as angry, flying off the handle. Do you guys understand? I'm trying to be real with you guys to see that I'm trying to hold myself accountable to this stuff too. Am I growing emotionally? And you know what? In the last couple of years, I've grown in huge ways emotionally. There are things that used to bother me, and you know, nowadays, they just don't bother me. You know why? Because I've grown emotionally, and that is connected to my walk with Jesus. Next question is this: how's your relational gauge? Most adults, when they get past high school, they have very few relationships. They have very few people, if any, that know what's going on in their life. And I'm not just talking about your spouse. Your spouse lives with you. But guess what? There's a lot of spouses that don't even know what's going on in their spouse's life. So that's not a given, but I'm talking about, do you have relationships in your life where your relational gauge is full? The way I put it in the first worship experience, do you have people in your life that basically speak into your life and help you grow? And then mental. Believe it or not, I seem like a positive person all the time. You know what I have to work on all the time? My thinking. Do you know what happens some days? I don't talk about this a lot. There are some days that my emotions start to override my thoughts. And I have to talk to myself. I drive and I talk to myself. I'm like, Chris, that's just your emotions talking. Don't listen to your emotions right now. They're not telling you facts. Okay? I'm going to give you an honest one. Okay? The attendance is down right now because people are on vacation. Okay, people are out, they're doing their last day. My emotions start to tell me, oh no, something's going on. Okay, I'm just trying to be real with you guys, okay? Don't be looking at me like that, all right? But you know what I'm saying? Like, all my emotions tell me, oh no. And then I go, no. People are on vacation, people are here, people are there. They're getting that last stuff in before school starts. Calm down, take a chill pill. It isn't all about you, Pinion. That's why I got to talk to myself. All right? And you know what happens? Boom. I'm not depressed. Now I'm using that as, I use the word depression. I'm not down. But I've got to work on my mental. So how is your mental gauge? If I didn't work on this every day when I walk outside of my house, as I'm walking the sidewalk over to my truck, I have to literally do this. Lord, thank you. And I just start thanking you for my wife. Thank you for my boys. Thank you for my grandbaby. Thank you for everything that you've given me. I have to just name off things because my brain is just like your brain. My brain will go right to the negative. My brain will go right to the emotions, and I'll be overwhelmed. So now it's your turn. You get to evaluate. Because we as a church want to know. This is anonymous, so if everybody will take you out your church app, so to participate in this next exercise, you'll need to open up your church app and click on the church survey. If you don't have the church app, you can take your camera and focus it in on the QR code, and there will be a little yellow thing that'll pop up. Okay, when you get to the front screen of the survey, there's going to be just a few questions here. We're going to look at the different gauges in your life. Again, this is totally anonymous, so we won't know who you are when you're doing this, but this would help us as pastors and as a church staff to help guide you, okay? When you get there to the very front, it's going to say Life LQC Gauges Survey, August 2024. You're going to hit Next. And the very first question is a drop-down menu. There will be a lot of drop-down menus. Okay, you'll click on it. Okay, and mine's not working right now because I think I've already taken it, but you'll click on it and just start going through and answering the questions, okay? So we're going to play some music. We're going to let you kind of go through those and answer the questions it should take you less than 2 minutes. And then... tell
me that it knows me.
You what?
Oh,
but we won't know you. We won't know you. Trust me.
I'm just curious.
All right, so we're going to play some music, and if you'll just go through and answer those questions, that would be awesome. A lot of them have drop-down menus. you get done, if you'll just look up so that I'll know that you're done. Give you about 45 more seconds here. So here's what we want to do. It's our desire that we want to help you grow in these different areas. We want to help you grow spiritually, and this will help us to know how you're doing. So here's the bottom line. The bottom line is this. If you want to grow, you'll grow. We're here to help you. We're here to help you with your spiritual gauge, with your physical gauge, with your emotional gauge, with your relational gauge, with your mental gauge. We're here to help you holistically with your life. But we can preach sermons, we can offer classes, we can offer life groups, we can offer different opportunities. But the reality is, if you want to change, you will put forth the effort and you can change. But we can't make you. Does that make sense? So it's your responsibility. So after the worship experience today, maybe you'd come up to one of our pastors and say, hey, listen, I really was kind of empty in this area. And I really need some help. And we will figure out how to help you. If we got to meet with you over coffee, if we got to get you into a life group, if we've got to figure out how to get you into a class or accountability or whatever to help you to grow in that area. I want to put the big idea up here just to remind you of this again, that the goal is for my life. The goal is for my life to continually be aligned with who? The ways of Jesus. So here's how this works. Everything that I do every day, I have to ask, am I living the way Jesus would live? And do I have his attitude on this subject matter or whatever? Because I want to become more like Jesus. I'm never going to be Jesus, but I want to become like him as his son or as his daughter. And so let's bow our heads and close our eyes. I want to give you an opportunity to just, between you and God, say, Lord, what are you doing in my heart? What are you doing in my life? And so with your heads bowed and your eyes closed, there's nothing really spiritual about that except just to cut out all of the distractions. And I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about your spouse. I'm talking about you. We're not talking about your kids. We're not talking about your coworkers. We're talking about you. That were there some areas, or was there an area that you like, hey, I scored low. My tank is low. And if there is, there's no shame in that. Guess what? There are times that I have tanks that are low. And I have to get help. Sometimes I have to go to my counselor. Sometimes I have to go to close, trusted friends. Sometimes I have to go to mentors. Sometimes I have to hire a coach in an area to say I'm not where I want to be. So if you scored low on some of the areas, there's no shame in that. But it's good to do an evaluation, a checkup. Say, Lord, where am I at? And then my question for you is, what are you going to do about it? Will you ask for help? Will you let one of the pastors or somebody in your life group know, hey, listen, I'm struggling in this area. I need help. I need some encouragement. I need some guidance. I need some direction. And our tendency as human beings is, well, I'll just do it myself. If you could have done it yourself, you would have already done it yourself. So it's probably time to ask for help. So if you're one of those that says, hey, I need help in an area, and you would just raise up your hand in full honesty, I want to pray for you. Awesome. See those hands. Thank you for being honest. Can't get anywhere until you're honest. And so God, right now, I pray for those that raise their hands for the authenticity to say, hey, listen, I'm struggling and I need help in an area. And so now, Lord, I pray that they would take a step and go to somebody that they trust. One of our pastors, a life group leader, or a friend, and say, hey, listen, I need help in my spiritual life. I need help with getting closer to the Lord. I need help with my physical and taking care of my body. I need help with my emotional life or my relational life or mental. And God, that we would take it seriously, that we would allow you to search us and to know, because you already know, so you would just reveal to us like that you know, and we realize like God knows your thoughts. God knows your motives. So we don't have to hide our motives. We can be fully honest with the Lord. Lord, I pray that through this time that we would have healing that would happen in people's lives. We love you, Jesus. In your name I pray. And everyone said, amen. Amen.